may be the biggest thing that's ever happened.
Wherever there is injustice, you will find us. Wherever there is suffering, we'll be there. Wherever liberty is threatened, you will find
The three AmiVO's. Dave McRae, Garnet Williams, Mike Pongracz. Separately, they are humble Canadian voiceover superstars. Together, they are the three AmiVO's.
Ladies and gentlemen,
here we go.
And now, the AmiVO's and Friends Super Fantastic Happy Hour VOdcast.
everyone ready?
Yeah.
And we're back.
Play the guy again.
Oh, the guy.
That should be the-
Sorry.
That should be the coming back from break. So does the tree only sing "Rock Around the Christmas"? Oh, because it's a tree.
He only knows one song, and it is not "Oh Christmas Tree," which I found kind of weird.
Nice. I feel like we've been very heavy this.
I was
this
just
show.
going to say, this doesn't feel like a Christmas special, does it?
And I think as
Oh,
we-
it's a Christmas special, but a year in review.
It's a
That's
year in
true.
review,
That's true.
and again, the tone of this year was not always sunshine and lollipops. So,
No, it wasn't.
But and especially now, as you know, we move from the whole politics and the sides that voice actors are on, and the strength of their voice and their opinions and how much what they believe in. The SAG-AFTRA strike, which hit, when did that? Was that October?
A month ago. Yeah.
September, October.
Yeah, I thought it was September.
The SAG-AFTRA video game strike, which is huge. I don't think there's an end in sight. It's been very quiet since the actors.
So what do these video game companies expect to do if all these actors are not going to be voicing their products?
I'm sure it's already fucked up, like games that were scheduled for release like months from now or a
Yeah,
year
yeah.
from now, because they've
There
got
are
all the
certain-
market. It's all like almost like movies nowadays for
Yeah,
some of
yeah.
these titles. So
Yeah.
they've got to get the stuff voiced and then get it
Yeah.
all produced, and then they got the marketing binge and all the tie-ins that they do with
Yeah.
stuff like that. So it's definitely throwing a wrench into their plans for the near future.
Right.
The strike itself, which again, being up here in Canada, we're not as I don't know, we're not as close to it, but we do have a couple of friends of ours who are in the union who have been down on the front lines of the picket lines.
Yeah.
Some heavy hitters, and definitely the reasons for the strike. Again, we try to be very impartial here for the most part. It leans very heavily to one side. I'm not going to say which side it leans heavier towards, but after the whole process and how important it is to the voice actors that are involved, especially in the video game industry. It's amazing to see the support that they've drawn, not just in LA and in Hollywood, because let's be honest, the video game acting pool, it's fairly small. If you take globally the really good actors, or
in comparison,
there's a
absolutely.
strong concentration in LA.
Yeah.
Vancouver, there's up in Canada, Vancouver is a big video game market. Toronto, I know Ubisoft, they do a lot of work out of Toronto as well. Some great actors here. It is kind of niche. It's not niche. It's very specialized.
Yes. Yeah.
But to see the amount of support from actors all over the VO community getting in behind the SAG-AFTRA strike is amazing. And I mean, for what they're asking from the developers, some would say very reasonable.
Extremely
demands.
reasonable in this day and age. It's just they've been doing things their way for so long, they're not really being open-minded and not thinking. These voice actors, most of the stuff that they're asking for has to do with either compensation or safety.
Yeah.
And they have
not even so much compensation for performance. It's more compensation
long term,
Yeah.
residuals, things like that.
Well,
which I don't think is unfair. But the safety aspect is something that I'm 100% behind them on.
Oh, absolutely. With motion
because
capture,
motion capture, having somebody on site to like a stunt coordinator or somebody like that for the physicality. But it's the whole wanting to scale back on how many hours you can make somebody scream and destroy their voice. So if they had that's great, I'm voicing a video game on Monday, I've got a commercial that I got to do another studio on Wednesday, and my voice is so raw I can't do it. Now you're interfering with my income. So it's not really something that big that they're asking for when you consider that it's like an instrument, like any instrument, and it can't be taxed like that without there being repercussions.
Now, let me throw this out there to you guys. Do you think this comes down to, and I'm not saying what the video game companies are doing is right. I actually, from what I've heard and from what I've read, and it's not just because I'm an actor. I think you can look at this objectively and be like, well, yeah, that sounds like a thing that should be given to these actors. Do you think again that part of the reason why these video game companies are digging their heels into the ground is yes because they've it's changed and and they've always operated this way, but again there's that stigma. It's like the internet. It's like using a commercial on the internet. There's this thing where it's like, well, it's a video game. It's not a movie. It's not a TV show. Now you and I know
think the
that video
developers
games
would like to think that video games are still like they are as important as they were in like '98.
Well, this is what I'm talking about.
When
video
clearly
games
they're making a lot more money now.
The video game industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Absolutely.
And so, again, there's this, whereas there's almost, it's like there's almost this lack of respect for the industry itself, where it's kind of like, but you're just voicing a video game. You're just now. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying that. Do you think that again, it's a cultural shift? It's an identity shift that needs to happen in order for the video game companies to go, oh yeah, of course. What the fuck are we thinking?
Well, you know what? I wish it was as simple because on paper, you would think this is a no-brainer.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean.
Because hey, sharing the wealth. Everybody's happy, why,
But just by the companies having respect for the art of what these actors are doing, motion capture, doing the voiceovers, if there was it's almost like there needs to be a cultural shift in how these big companies see this art.
But right there, this is as the tale as old as time.
I'm
an artist,
Beauty and the Beast?
An artist
yes.
is all about the art. A business is all about the bottom line.
Totally understand, but you don't have the same issue in the motion picture industry. In certain areas is what I'm saying. To a certain extent,
I mean,
in certain areas.
They're the small percentage of actors that make the big bucks.
Here's a question. Was there a stunt coordinator beside Andy Serkis when he was doing certain stuff on some of the stuff he was doing?
Guaranteed.
Oh, yeah.
Well, then what the hell's the difference?
This and so opens up the giant Pandora's box.
Because that doesn't even have anything to do with voiceover.
Yeah, it's
So I mean,
what worries me a little bit about the strike itself. Yeah. There's a few things. I mean, one that worries me is that are we past the point right now where constructive arguments can be made? Right. Have things fractured so much that this is going to be a very long and drawn out process where, and we saw it within the first day of the strike happening, a certain company decided to perhaps haphazardly try to hone in on potential business that might open up for non-union actors.
Basically said, hey, while they're on strike, we've got your cheap talent over here that you can hire.
And here's the thing.
But they quickly claimed that it was a hack or a rogue.
Rogue employee.
Yeah. They changed.
I call bullshit on that, but whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But there's this notion that if this gets dragged out long, which I'm sure it's like any negotiation, if you drag it out long enough, eventually either the union will crack or the people on the union, the unionized members will crack and say, well, I'd rather have this than nothing. There's that potential. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we have a very strong sense of belief in what they stand for in the future.
They're a month and a half in, and the longer this goes on, the more millions of dollars the companies are going to be putting at risk here.
Yes, and I'm sure that those developers are quickly thinking, how can we get around having voice talent? How can we get around having sort of the
Sure. And there's no doubt in my mind that they have also had the same, could we use union?
Oh, no,
or
no
non-union?
question. No
You know,
question.
could we use a non-union? Now, also, too, is that have there been, as of yet, 6 weeks into it, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
has there been a deal brought forward at all that somebody has rejected?
I
And what
haven't
were
really,
the details in that
I haven't
deal?
really followed very, very closely since everything. I know that there was a lot of back and forth for many years. I guess there were some deals that were put forward by the union to the developers, and depending on whose side of the story you're getting, they were either legitimate or they were completely asinine.
Sounds to me that now it's just a waiting game. The video game companies are hoping that they break, and
It's a waiting game, but it's really, I mean, this does set the tone for
does.
not only the video game industry,
No,
like the
there's a
small video game
trickle-down
bubble.
effect for sure.
Absolutely, because if the solidarity here, if it's good for this part of the VO community, then it's good for everybody.
That's right.
And that's why it's really fascinating to see how the entire VO global community is supporting what's a smaller brother and sisterhood of voice actors.
I can absolutely see why it is incredibly important for SAG-AFTRA to win this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's the video game industry, like we talked about, it's ridiculous now.
Yeah,
and especially going into the
absolutely.
Christmas season, the titles that came out from with the whole strike, the code names, and people could figure out what these games are multi-billion-dollar games.
Yeah,
this is now we're talking movie.
Yes.
Making more money than Jersey Girl did.
And
Sorry, Ken Smith.
There are people, are there not, who are their living is playing video games, and they're multimillionaires.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just,
It was really heartening to see. Was it Steve Bloom that did the big post?
Mm-hmm.
And Steve admittedly said he makes decent wage on video games. He feels fairly compensated for what he does.
Right.
Mind you, he's earned that.
Yes.
right.
But he steadfastly came out and stood behind the people that don't make that kind of money,
who are lucky to book a game, and then they might not book anything again for a couple months.
That's right.
So they're not regularly working, so they have to make sure that they're fairly compensated for the work they do.
Right.
And that seems to be an idea that people that aren't in the industry, they just see, oh, you get paid that much money just for like a 4-hour session. What are you complaining about? Yeah, but that could be the only session they get for months.
Yeah.
That's right.
And they got to live. They got to live off of that while they're going out to auditions and
That's right.
all kinds
That's
of
right.
other things. So it's not that cut and dried.
That cultural shift that you're talking about, I don't think we're necessarily there yet, because
Oh, not at all. I just said that's
it is still, I mean, from the industry that Garnet and I we come from radio. One of my old bosses, God love the guy, he said, if you don't like what if I can't pay you more, I can pay you this. If you don't like what you're making here, go somewhere else.
right.
I'll get somebody that will. And it's not from the business side. I get it, because that's just the business mentality.
Sure.
From the artist side, that's just heavy-handed business, not respecting what I bring to the table. It's a real contentious issue. And I think the little bit of humor that has come out of certain things in dealing with the strike, we talked about this a little bit off air. Something that sort of appeared, I think, the tail end of 2015, but this year were some really interesting Twitter accounts that came up.
Yeah.
It's great. As soon as I'm gonna look
Well,
this up
it's
right
funny.
now.
Not my voice. No, not voices.com. Was that?
Notvoices.com was one that's particularly funny.
Again, these are parody Twitter accounts. And notvoices.com came out, I think, shortly after the big interview with Graham Spicer and David Ciccarelli.
It did. That's what made it so timely at the
And it has 434 followers.
Yeah. I mean, some of them not very big. There's another one, the voiceover... is it the
Realist?
voiceover
I'm looking at it
realist?
right now.
Okay, voiceover realist. And then there's what's the other one?
VO Helper.
VO Helper's another one. There's a couple of parody Twitter accounts, which again, you know that it's disgruntled voice actors using it as a, some
Satire, parody.
Some would say, "Oh, that's really kind of,"
or in the case of the notvoices.com, just to take shots at them.
take shots. Yeah.
The VO Realist?
Is it VO? I don't.
Or voiceover realist.
Anyway, but somebody had made a comment. I can't. Was it the VO Helper? Or was it the Not My Voices about this strike that if you want to be taken seriously, stop taking selfies.
Yeah,
which
you're on the line.
You're on the picket line. Stop taking selfies. This is not an opportunity for you to.
I know it's really cool that Jim Cummings and Bill Farmer were there, but
yeah, let's remember why we're here instead of like, hey, look who I'm with. Some of these can be really nasty. Yeah. But again, in this year, which has been very, there's been a lot of contentious beliefs, a little bit of levity in a really, sort of nasty shot way.
And some would say a healthy dose of snark.
A healthy dose of snark.
I like it.
Healthy dose of snark. So if there is room for a little light and a little levity,
sure there is.
Because 2016, for as heavy as it may have been, there was a little bit of fun stuff, and we will discuss some more fun stuff when we come back.
Oh, and some dark stuff too.
Oh gosh.
All right.
We are finished. We are over. It's over.
The AmiVO's and Friends Super Fantastic Happy Hour Vodcast has been brought to you by the 3 AmiVO's.
Show's over.
It was written, recorded, edited, and produced from deep within the Great White North by Dave McRae, Garnet Williams, and Mike Pongracz.
Are we going bye-bye?
For more AmiVO fun, questions, or comments, check us out online at 3amivos.com. On Twitter at the 3amivos. Until next